What's up everyone, Jimmy here from Base Game Reviews, and today we're diving back into the world of acclaimed gaming mastermind Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding. Can this sequel live up to the massive hype built over the 5 years since the original release? Or has too much time passed since Kojima first gave us a glimpse into this strange and unforgettable universe? Let's find out in our review of Death Stranding 2 on the beach. How I played. I played Death Stranding 2 on the beach on my PS5 base model. I played on my 1440p 32-inch LG display, and I set the game to performance mode, which runs at 1080p 60 FPS. Story, 18 out of 20. Death Stranding 2 picks up a few years after the events of the first game. Sam and Lou are kicking it at the top of a mountain in Mexico, where they now live. Your first mission is to take Lou back to your camp, and this is where the game introduces you to the basic controls. While you learn the controls, you also get to immerse yourself in the insane fidelity of Death Stranding 2. More on that later. You have a mix of cutscenes and story events that quickly bring you back into the gameplay of Death Stranding. In the first game, you work to connect all of the United States together via the chiral network. Now it is time to extend that coverage to new continents. And so, Sam's next journey begins. Cutscenes. What do you expect? The cutscenes are unbelievable in Death Stranding 2. The lifelike fidelity Kojima Productions is able to pull out of the Decima engine is mind-blowing. These cutscenes are cinema quality, and it genuinely felt like I was just watching a blockbuster movie. I found myself looking forward to when the next cutscene would be, and what batshit crazy story elements or lore Kojima was going to drip feed me next. I felt like most of the actors in this game did amazing jobs with their characters. Norman Reedus as Sam is Norman Reedus. If you've watched any movie or TV show he's been in the last 10 years, you get the gist of his performance. But to be fair, I think Kojima wrote the part of Sam specifically for Norman, so this is a pass. Léa Seydoux as Fragile is still my favorite for obvious reasons. I really felt like she carried a lot of the scenes in Death Stranding 2. Hideo Kojima has always created very unique and stylish characters who have backstories you just want to learn more about. And the new additions to Death Stranding 2 are no different. Rainy, Tomorrow, Dollman, Neil are all spectacular new characters that bring a lot to the game story. World building. I feel like the world building in Death Stranding 2 is getting such a high score because of all the groundwork that Death Stranding laid out before it. We needed that foundation to build on and actually get into the nitty-gritty of Kojima's new world that he created. The world building in Death Stranding 2 is told in the same ways as the first game, through a lot of NPC dialogue and with very detailed, long cutscenes. You do get some bits of information from logs and side missions, but the world is very much told to you as a player. Most of it won't make sense, but I loved all the main story beats and emotions that were being conveyed. Overall story. Okay, I feel conflicted here, because at my core, I felt like the story of Death Stranding 2 did nothing really new that the first game's story didn't already accomplish. And before you get all keyboard warrior on me, what I mean by that is, yes, the events in the story are different from the first game, obviously, but the emotional beats were not. Death Stranding, from my interpretation, was all about loss and connection between people and how important that connection is. Death Stranding 2 builds on that theme, and although the story is a little more refined, I feel like that is only because of the groundwork the first game had to lay out. Hideo Kojima talked about the development of Death Stranding 2 and how it mainly took place over the period of 2020's pandemic. And to me, that makes a lot of sense. At that time, he had basically just wrapped on the Death Stranding game, and now he found himself, like a lot of us, being put in isolation and wondering if the world was ever going to go back to the way it was. And I feel like during this time, he missed all of the connections and friendships he made with the cast of the game. So he wanted an excuse to get everyone back together again. This is all speculation, but this is how the story felt to me as the player. I didn't feel like I was being told a new groundbreaking story, but I was just being told the same story, slightly refined. It was still great, but kind of like the comparison of God of War 2018 versus Ragnarok. Nothing beats that first immersion into the world. Fight me in the comments all you want. Graphics, 15 out of 15 character models. At a glance, I was thinking to myself, this looks moderately better than the first game, which already looked incredible for its time. But the pure magic Kojima Productions pulled out of the Decima engine for DS2 needs to be studied. All of the characters look almost lifelike. I mentioned earlier that it felt like I was just watching IRL content with these actors, and it does. When you compare character models from the first game to Death Stranding 2, you will see how much additional detail there is in their skin and face lines. The textures just look true to form. All of the main characters' NPCs look so unreal. But 90% of the NPCs that are just in the random bunkers and stations you make deliveries to all have a noticeable lack of attention to detail compared to the main cast. That is expected, but I just wanted to note it. Environments. The first Death Stranding was vivid and really felt like real environments in the Pacific Northwest. But as you go through that game, a lot of the biomes felt samey. A lot of greenery with rocky mountains. So Death Stranding 2 choosing Mexico and Australia as its settings really brought up the diversity environments, and they all look breathtaking. From desert mountains to jungle terrain to sandy beaches, there is just so much variety in environments. When you trek across the country, it was pure delight to take in the scenery and bask in the power of the Decima engine. Special effects. All of the special effects look incredible. The fire and the lightning effects and just all of the weather systems in the game really show the peak of what this console generation is capable of. It leaves you wondering, why are all these other games struggling so hard that look way worse, or even look like previous generation console games? To also find out that Death Stranding 2 has zero ray tracing in the game, I feel like the in-game lighting is an art. And it's becoming a lost one as many studios just rely on ray tracing or Lumen to just auto-calculate all of the lighting for them. But at what cost? For sometimes amazing visuals with a massive downside of performance and functionality. Not worth it in my opinion. Kojima Productions shows yet again that art direction triumphs over all and does not need all of the most cutting-edge tech to pull off techniques that have already been mastered with older, tried-and-true methods. Kojima has always had style, and it really shows here in Death Stranding 2. Audio, 12 out of 15. Ambience. Music is everything when you want to tell an emotional story, and the OST and general ambience in Death Stranding 2 is next level. You can't help but evoke emotion when you play this game and get swelled by its masterful OST. The main tracks are all composed by the artist Woodkid, whereas in the previous game the main artist was Low Roar. Still available in this game, I definitely felt that the atmosphere and mood of Woodkid's tracks perfectly matched that of Death Stranding 2. And it makes sense since Woodkid was actually part of the development process in Death Stranding 2. I love that Kojima Productions took feedback given from the first game and implemented a playlist feature in Death Stranding 2. One of the things that bothered me in the first game is you have these amazing first experiences walking outside with curated low roar tracks, but when you go back, it's just dead air or ambient sound. Well, in Death Stranding 2, there are the same curated moments, but afterwards you can collect your favorite tracks as you hear them and put them on a playlist that plays while you're out doing your thing in the open world. A+. Boss music. Kind of disappointing. It was general ambient intensity music. I think it's the same track used in the first game. I wish they did more with some of the boss tracks in Death Stranding 2. Pure shame. Sound design. The voice acting is top quality, the sound mixing and soundscape is out of this world, and just how everything mixes together in perfect harmony. You can tell that Hideo Kojima puts care into all of his projects. There are many behind the scenes pictures of Kojima playing through the game himself, which I 100% believe. He even edits all of the trailers for Death Stranding, so you know it's going to be done right. Performance, 9 out of 10. Frame rate. Again, I'm super impressed that Death Stranding 2 runs at a perfect 60 frames per second on a base PS5, and they didn't limit that to just the PS5 Pro or anything. I do wish that they inserted a balance mode that was just an unlocked graphics mode for people who want that, but I'm happy with the 2 graphics modes on the console version. But I'm also desperately waiting for this game to release on PC where I can really push the game's limits. Stability. A true testament to when your game's director actually plays through your entire game from start to finish. Death Stranding 2 had virtually no bugs that I encountered in my entire playthrough, and Death Stranding 2 is frequently updated. Every time I boot up the game, I feel like there's a new update that I have to perform, and the new updates always refine the game in some way or enhance the experience by tightening up issues some people may have encountered. To release a game that is almost flawless should be applauded. Gameplay, 19 out of 40. Controls. The controls feel better than the cumbersome first game. I switched back to Death Stranding Director's Cut after rolling credits on Death Stranding 2, and wow, the convolution is real in that game. To accept a mission feels like 150 prompts, where it's much more simplified in Death Stranding 2. So kudos to Kojima Productions for listening to fans and making the game more refined and easy to manage control-wise. Mechanics. Apart from everything just being much more refined, there are some additional new mechanics in Death Stranding 2 over the original. You get a very cool use out of one of your NPC companions, and I think Kojima definitely took inspiration from God of War 2018 and how that game used one of its NPCs. There's even a nod to that when introducing the character. I also liked how much they build on the zipline feature in the game versus the first, and how there is now a cargo train that you can set up in certain areas of Death Stranding 2's world. Pacing. I apologize in advance, but I gotta be real here. The pacing sucks in these games. It literally feels like chores of having to do these bullshit deliveries just to be able to advance to the next story section and be introduced to the next mainline NPC in the game. I was literally getting fatigued during my playthrough, but I knew I had to put in the mindless work or I would suffer for it in the long game. There were many points where I just wanted the next cutscene to happen because I was tired of making random deliveries. I understand that the game is all about connection, but the gameplay loop was very tedious, and it is exactly like it was in the first game. There was this Twitter user who was mostly into the console fanboy type stuff and post that kind of thing, who posted a clip of Death Stranding 2 and made it seem like the game is way more action focused than the first game. But this post is massively deceiving, as I pointed out on X, because the gameplay they posted is actually just the VR training area where you can go at almost any time and practice using the different weapons in the game. Death Stranding 2 is not this. It is not Metal Gear Solid in the Death Stranding world. It is very much like the first game. Yes, there are areas where there are bandits who you can engage in combat with, but most times it's never worth it and much easier to just avoid them. You can go through the camp and just big dick all of them if you want, but even still, this is a small fraction of the actual gameplay of Death Stranding 2. So don't let anyone fool you into believing it's more like that. UI UE. Again, the UI UE is similar to the first game, but more refined. It is a big improvement overall, but compared to other games, it can still feel clunky. There are a lot of functions that are fitted into the confines of a PS5 DualSense controller, and you definitely feel it when navigating the systems and menus in Death Stranding 2. Boss quality. The bosses in Death Stranding 2 are literally the same boss BTs you encountered in the first game. And I know a lot of you will use the argument,
well, it's the same world, why would they be any different?
Which I've always felt is a cop-out and just mad coping. There's a new mech BT type boss that you, spoiler, have multiple encounters with. But I was very underwhelmed with the bosses of Death Stranding 2 and thought they could have been more creative. I also want to make a point that the main antagonist in this game was a massive letdown for me. It just kind of felt cheap. They are a great character, but I was ready for something new and I just felt let down. Kind of like Consort Radon let down in Shadow of the Erdtree, or Emperor Palpatine let down in Star Wars The Last Jedi. Enemy variety. Bandits or BTs, just like the first game. Lame. Gameplay variety. Your choices are make deliveries to all the random NPCs in the game, or go out and farm materials so you can pave roads and create zip lines to make first activity easier to do. You can also hang out in different hot springs or stay in the game's hub and take pictures of all your co-stars in the game. Wait, 5 out of 5. No, 10 out of 5. No, a million out of 5. This is amazing. Replayability. These games are incredible and emotional story delivery devices, but as a game, I never want to play them ever again. The only thing that might make me want to play through Death Stranding 2 again from a fresh save file is when the game releases on PC, and that's just to see what I can do to push this game's already impressive visual fidelity. Other than that, I will never play this game again. Bonus, 0 out of 3. I'm shocked. For a Sony partnered title, there are no accessibility options that are worthy of note. There are the bare basic closed captions, but that's basically it. Overall, 73 out of 100. Good. Death Stranding 2 on the beach suffers the same fate as The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom or God of War Ragnarok. It's just Death Stranding, but better. I had the same frustrations as I did with the original game, and more I find myself asking, why wasn't this just made into an 8-episode HBO series? I feel like the term gameplay is used very loosely when it comes to Death Stranding 2, and although it is very creative and very unique and very Hideo Kojima, I'm just finding myself disappointed with the gameplay, but massively impressed with the cutscenes and visuals and storytelling. If you like the original, then you will love Death Stranding 2. But if you didn't, then don't go into this expecting a different type of game, because it isn't.